All right, well, as we continue to get more reaction on the Section 89 parliamentary panel report on President Cyril Ramaphosa's alleged criminal activities at his farm, we are now joined via Zoom by political analyst Tessa Dooms to weigh in on the developments on the Phala Phala matter. A very good afternoon to you, Tessa. Thanks very much for joining us here on SABC News.
Thank you for having me.
You're most welcome. Based on the report by the Section 89 panel, I mean, should the president heed some of these calls? We're hearing from some of the NEC members, including Tony Yengeni, Lindiwe Sisulu, saying that he should step aside at the very least, according to the ANC's own policies. What are the implications of this report? Should he indeed, based on that, step aside?
I think it would be wrong for us to presume what he should do as ANC president, as the general public. I think the ANC does have the right to debate that on their own terms and interpret their own constitution. What is more important for us as the rest of society is the way we interpret the constitution of the country to which this president has sworn an oath of office. We must remember that the report that has come through is a parliamentary report. It's a report of the People's Assembly of this country, and a report that goes to the People's Assembly for our representatives as society to consider whether this is a president who is fit for office. And what this report has said unequivocally is that it has cast doubt on the president's fitness for office, on the seriousness that he's taken with his oath, on the ways in which he's conducted himself, and it basically says that the president must answer to criminal liability. And what we're dealing with here is not necessarily a legal process at this point. And the ANC has for many years hidden behind the question of the law. So is somebody charged? Has somebody been found guilty? But our political processes don't require us to hold somebody to a legal standard only about whether someone has been found guilty in a court of law, because there are also ethical questions, and there are questions about whether or not the code of conduct of our parliament has been adhered to or not. And so what we should be asking is the parliamentarians that have been deployed into that parliament to represent us as the people, will they look at the constitution, will they look at that report, and will they then discharge their duties to say, does this president still have a mandate to serve this country?
Yeah, I know you're talking about it as him in his capacity as president of the country, but it's also interesting the fact that this is coming at a time that, you know, we're getting closer and closer to the ANC's elective conference, and we've seen, that the ANC has been divided on the matter. What impact do you think, this report will then have on this upcoming conference?
If the ANC is true to itself in any way, it will have a major impact on this conference. It will test the ANC's understanding and interpretation of their step-aside rule, because their step-aside rule does not only talk about charges, but it also talks about bringing the party into disrepute through serious offences. That bring the party into disrepute. I mean, besides stepping aside, will the ANC, for example, take the president on a proper disciplinary process and subject him to that? I mean, we haven't heard about the ANC talking about its disciplinary processes in so long, because we're either hearing about an integrity committee, which is by and large toothless, or we're hearing about step aside, which is a kind of zero-sum game. The ANC should take this into account. The branches should take this into account. If the branches have any kind of autonomy, as it were, they would be reading this report as branches and asking themselves what they really believe about that report. And even if you can't prove that the president is guilty at this point, what does it say to society when this report is before you and the other contender for the ANC presidency, Zweli Mkhize, for all of the things that hang over his head, is known to have voluntarily stepped away from his duties as Minister of Health, even when there were no charges. The public protector was asked by the president himself to step aside while her impeachment proceedings are going through. Will the ANC hold the president to the same standards? That's what we should be looking out for as society, looking at our governing party, the party that we have given the greatest mandate to at this point.
Yeah. Tessa, the president is set to address the nation later on today. I suppose it will be this evening. Do you have any expectations of what you think the president might say this evening to us?
At minimum, the president needs to actually take the country into his confidence for the first time. He produced a lengthy submission that he gave to that panel. I would expect him to speak to that submission and explain some of the really irrationalities and leaps in logic that are made in that. I mean, there are certain things in there, just the receipt of the money that's given as proof of the transaction is a laughable document. It really is a clownishly laughable document. And the president needs to stand there and account to the country and say to us, this is what I say has happened, and we should be able to interrogate that. And it also raises a question we've had for many years now, that the president thinks he can just stand up, speak to the nation, and then not take any questions from the media and not be accountable for anything he says. Today, that has to end, and we have to have a process that holds this president accountable to the public he serves and not only the ANC that has deployed him.
All right. Great pleasure to have you on the show as always. Thank you very much to you, Tessa Dooms, their political analyst, weighing in on that report by the Section 89 independent panel. Let's continue.